So the idea behind this module is to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing on the course. We've just covered why you should learn Node.js. Now let's look at the how and what. So you should have a good idea of the roadmap we're going to go through and the product you're going to have by the end of this course. But first, let's start with a very simple question that we haven't really covered yet. What is Node.js? Take a look at this diagram. Here you can see that Node encapsulates the Google V8 JavaScript engine. Node itself is not a programming language. It is something that allows you access to JavaScript with some very particular features that are held by the API and also the Node core objects. And we'll get into what all that means very, very soon. Node provides the input and output to that JavaScript engine. This allows Node to be used for a wider range of applications than JavaScript on a web browser, for instance. So how do you access Node? How do you actually use it? Well, it's all done from the command line. And before we get into that, we need to cover two things off right away. Firstly, have you installed Node? Is it on your machine? Because if it isn't, you won't be able to follow along with the exercises, and that will be a bit silly. So, I'm not going to cover that here because that could go on for some time because we've got to cover all the different platforms. So there is an additional module that will allow you to go through all these stages. And what you need to do is if you haven't got Node installed, then you need to hit pause now, go and find that module and then run through it so you've got Node running on your machine. Don't worry, Node is available for a very wide range of platforms, even Raspberry Pis and things like that. So I'm sure you can get it running very, very quickly. We're also going to be spending a lot of time on the command line. Now, if you're not familiar with this, maybe because you're a web developer and you've been using text editors, IDEs, that sort of thing to develop, it's a good time now to get yourself familiar with it. Again, I've provided an additional module for you to have a look at and get familiar with the command line before we continue. So if that's something that's maybe you're a bit unsure of, now's a good time to press pause, go and find that module, run through it, and then come back. Don't worry, we'll wait. Just a quick word about prerequisites. That is what we expect you to already know in order to complete this course. Now, I'm going to be covering the differences between using Node and using JavaScript in the web browser, but I'm not going to be covering JavaScript, the language itself, only those differences. So if you're not comfortable with JavaScript, maybe now's a good time to go and find another course, get comfortable with JavaScript, and then come back here. And that way you'll have a good, solid grounding and you'll enjoy this course a lot more. Let's start by testing your Node installation. Open up a command line and then at the prompt type in node space -v and press return. That's a lowercase v. You should get a version number and it should be 8 or above. That's the version we're going to be using for this course. Lots of versions are released of Node all the time. 8 is a bit special because it's the long-term support or LTS version. That means it's going to be supported for a number of years and we can use that as a standard for the code that we're going to be showing you now. Because in the future, new commands will be added, new ways of doing things. It's a very fast evolving language. Okay, now it's time to do some actual code. And we're going to start with the most obvious programming exercise. You probably have already guessed what it is. Yes, it's Hello World. Now, got two ways of doing this. Firstly, because we're on this groovy live video platform, if you look over there, you should be able to see a box where you can actually type the command in. So you don't need to be able to run anything else. However, if you wish, you can open up your favorite text editor and type in the following command. console.log brackets, open quote, hello world, quote, close bracket, semicolon. Don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about the code like this all the time. It's just this one time. Now, if you're in the groovy console over there, click the button, and in a few seconds, you should see the output. And of course, it says hello world. If you're on the command line, save that text file as helloworld.js. Any location, doesn't matter as long as you can get to it. And then type in node space helloworld.js and press return. You should get the same thing, hello world. What we've done there is instructed one of Node's objects to do a little job for us. Console is an object that deals with basic output to the screen for us. And .log is basically the same as echo or print in other languages. It just means write something to the standard output. And we've asked it to write hello world. It automatically inserts a new line for us as well. So now you've written your first line of Node. Quite straightforward, huh? Well, we're going to build from there. Brilliant. You've got Node installed. Now, what is it we're going to learn on this course? Let me list a few things off for you. We're going to start simple. We're going to start on the command line and show you how Node can be used to write command line applications. We'll then move on to the web. You won't believe how easy it is to write a web server in just a few lines of code using Node. It really is incredible. But you can't do much with it without writing a lot more code, so that's when Express comes in. Express is a framework, a module that extends the capabilities of Node and allows you to really easily write complex web applications. And we're going to need to talk to databases as well. So we're going to use Sequelize, another Node module, which is what we call these extensions, and it allows you to manage databases and talk to them and do all the things you'd expect, but you don't need to know any SQL. If you want to use NoSQL databases, we're going to cover that off as well. After that, we're going to take Express, we're going to use some of the more advanced features, and we're going to build a model view controller application. Now, back-end developers will probably be familiar with this, front-end developers maybe not so much, but don't worry, we'll cover it off and explain about this really good methodology for building web applications that separates everything up so it's much easier to maintain. We're also going to have a look at WebSockets. WebSockets is where Node really shines. This is live interactivity over the web, something that's much more difficult to do with the more traditional programming languages. I mentioned modules earlier. You're going to write your own module, and we're going to show you how you can share that module with other people and be part of the great Node community. And then we're going to look at how you deploy your application. How do you get it out there on the internet? How do you monitor it? How do you look after it? Plenty of options doing it. We're going to look at some of the more popular ones. Okay, so we've had a bit of a dry list of what it is we're going to learn. What's fun is how we're going to learn it. You've already started. That command line application, that hello world, that is the acorn from which we are going to grow our big old Node tree. Over the length of this course, you're going to turn that into the world's most over-engineered hello world web application. It's going to have a user database. It's going to have translation built into it. It's going to have facts of the day. And all the users are going to be able to communicate with each other using WebSockets. In other words, we're going to build what is essentially quite a dumb app, but it's going to encompass many principles of Node programming and teach you a lot of experience. It's also going to be a great leaping off point because you can then take that and experiment with it and modify it and change it and add features. We're going to make it really straightforward for you to get into that code, and you're going to build it all yourself. So before we go any further, let's look at some of the key concepts of Node.